Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Chat. Tonight title is Nitric Oxide as an Anti-Infective, Our Journey. Well, good evening. My name is Mark Cannon, and welcome to Fireside Chats. Before I introduce my guests for the evening, why do we call it Fireside Chats? I know I've explained this every time, but Fireside Chats were a series of radio addresses delivered by U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt from 1933 to 1944. Although they were meant initially to gather support for the New Deal policies, they later on became very important for giving encouragement to the American people during the Great Depression and, of course, World War II. Our AOSH Fireside Chats are meant to inspire, to encourage all of us to work every day to better the health of our patients, all of other people, in fact. And we have a series where every month, often twice a month, we ask those who are at the forefront, those who have met many challenges, to share their source of courage and discuss the newest advancements in their field of endeavor. Tonight, guests are Dr. Gilly Regev and Dr. Chris Miller, co-founders of Sanitize. And again, they're going to be talking about nitric oxide as an anti-infective, our journey. If you're a regular to AOSH, you know we've been talking about nitric oxide for a very long time. Some people might have thought we were talking about nitrous oxide, which for them is a laughing matter, but this is not a laughing matter. We're talking about nitric oxide. And to tell you how important it is, there's a journal that you've heard referenced many, many times at AOSH, nitric oxide, that is from the Society for Nitric Oxide, which actually I have joined, which is not hard to join at all. You just actually have to make a donation. That makes it very, very easy for all of us. So I'll start off with some introductions. Dr. Gilly Regev has her PhD, and she's one of Canada's foremost scientific entrepreneurs and innovators, co-founded and is leading one of Canada's most successful R&D companies, Sanitize Research and Development Corp. As CEO of Sanitize, she has led the company significant progress in bringing its novel therapeutic platform, we're going to learn about tonight, to people globally. And this is what this is all about. And by harnessing the well-studied antimicrobial properties of this tiny molecule that occurs in the body, nitric oxide, they have been able to bring this therapeutic platform. Under her leadership, Sanitize has overseen a steady flow of clinical studies on the company's lead product, known as NONS, N-O-N-S, trademark, so you can't use that, guys. Nitric oxide nasal spray for the treatment of COVID-19. Dr. Regev earned her PhD in biochemistry at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Dr. Chris Miller, PhD, is the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of Sanitize Research and Development. What a coincidence having both you guys on at the same time. What are the odds of that? What are the odds? Dr. Miller has been a pioneer in the gaseous nitric oxide field with more than 20 years of experience in clinical trial design and execution, with over 40 peer-reviewed papers. Amongst his contributions, Dr. Miller characterized one of the bactericidal mechanisms of the action of nitric oxide, and identified the effective dose, that's really important, against multiple microbes, including bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Dr. Miller also worked in the design of 2 of the first 3 FDA-approved nitric oxide gas delivery devices, and designed and completed the first human clinical trial demonstrating that inhaled nitric oxide was safe in healthy adults as a potential inhaled antimicrobial strategy. Thank you so much. I mean, that is so for many of us, that's just so much right there alone. Prior to Sanitize, Dr. Miller founded Pulmonx in 1993. He has received his doctorate in experimental medicine from University of British Columbia, and holds a degree in health management and respiratory therapy from Ottawa University. And I want to thank you both so much for taking out from your very busy schedule to be with us tonight. with all of us. And I have to tell you, there's a lot of people who see this, and it's really, I want to really express, I really love research. Everyone knows this who knows me. I really love the benefit that everyone gets in society from research. So I'm going to start off with Dr. Regev, and I want you to tell us a little bit something about yourself so we know a little bit more about you. Then Dr. Miller, you can do that. And tell me a little bit more about how you met. How do you form one of these companies? How do you get together? How do you connect? It's just LinkedIn, or how do you do it?
So thank you so much, Dr. Cannon, for bringing us on. It's our pleasure to be here. And as you can see, we're both very excited about science too. This is our life. And not just science. I think the one common thread is both of us see science as a way to improve people's life. Really, that's the journey of where this whole thing took us. And I think that's how, in part, how we met. We just met in a hallway somewhere where Chris was telling me what he was doing, and he says, "Oh, you're a biochemist. I could use some help with nitric oxide." And I basically said, "Okay, tell me everything you know about nitric oxide." And I think it's been 14, 15 years ago. I'm still learning every day. It's pretty incredible how such a small molecule can do so much. So that's how the journey started. And we've been working together since.
There's over 114,000 publications on nitric oxide. I mean, it tells you how much, there's so much, and we know so little. And it got started. I think the major journey got started maybe when the 3 Nobel Prizes were given for it in 1998. That's what got everyone really aware of it, at least as far as I was aware of it. That started. Dr. Miller.
Yes. Thank you very much for letting us come on to your show. It's an honor to be here. Well, I go back. I just noticed on the BIOS that it was 20 years, but when I looked at one of my articles, I realized it's over 30 years now. So I'm getting long in tooth in this area. But I was originally a respiratory therapist and involved heavily in ICU and neonates, and was introduced by an abstract to this molecule. And I was fascinated because this was in 1989. And so I was fascinated that I knew a new gas molecule. And I was very passionate about clinical work, especially with neonates, and to have a new gas. And so I didn't know anything about it, and was super excited about a new molecule in gas. And so then I was at the time wanting to do more education, and was going back for my PhD, and knew nothing about this molecule. And then I started looking into it, and it was a poisonous gas at the time. No one knew anything about it. And I decided I better read something about this, because I had this aha moment to go after nitric as my life's goal kind of thing. And then the first thing I read was it's a poisonous gas. And I'm like, maybe I better rethink this, but after I did a lit search, and I ended up publishing in October 1992 this review article. And today I just read what I wrote in it, and it's quite audacious what I wrote. I have it in front of me. I just want to share it with you. It said,
please.
It's hard to imagine a toxic air pollutant juxtaposed with important medical gases like oxygen and nitrous oxide. Yet, the possible use of inhaled nitric oxide as a therapeutic gas may well be one of the more important findings in pulmonary medicine. That was 6 years before the Nobel Prize was given, and so I was either absolutely insane or,
man, I tell you, no,
incredibly lucky. And so the journey started there, and it's been a wild ride the whole way.
I know, because at the beginning with nitric oxide, poisonous and cancer causing, they had all sorts of things they were blaming on nitric oxide, which was shocking to me. And now we think it's shocking, but back in the time, they thought of it like nitrogen dioxide as like a pollutant of some sort. Yeah, I remember that very well. So how do you balance this? Like Chris, Dr. Miller, it seems like you've been on a mission. How do you balance this with the rest of your life? Have you been dreaming nitric oxide every night?
What rest of
Yes,
the
I dream it. In fact, my aha moment was in a vision at night, and I woke my wife up and said, "I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life and do my PhD, and it's this molecule nitric oxide." And ever since, I've been just jazzed about it. But I tell you a funny story because you were alluding to the fact about the poisonous gas, and so my wife is she's a nurse practitioner now, but at the time she was the head of the neonatal unit where we first used nitric to save a blue baby who was going to pass away. And I showed her the equipment we were going to use. And of course, we couldn't measure that stuff. So part of my claim to fame is creating an analyzer and delivery system for the babies in the early 90s. But as I was about to wheel into her intensive care unit to save one of her babies, she said, "You cannot come in here with that." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "It has a skull and crossbones on the cylinder." And I said, "Oh, okay." So that night she spent the night on her sewing machine making a cover with baby teddy bears and pink to go over the cylinder to cover up the skull and crossbones. And we ended up saving that baby. It was one of the first babies we've saved. We saved in days. So
that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I applaud you guys. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan, as you can tell. Dr. Regev, tell me about yourself. And are you also living, breathing nitric oxide every day?
I think it switches between the days that I curse Chris for getting me into this to the days that I thank him for that. And when we started Sanitize, which was almost 6 years ago, I don't even know what were we thinking, really. It was just two crazy people trying to do something to change the world, and everywhere everyone thought we were completely out of our mind, and the chances of passing 2 years was maybe less than 1%. So I think that as entrepreneurs, life-work balance doesn't exist. You do whatever you need, you do whatever you can, you do it whenever is needed.
Right.
To bring your dream into the reality. And I got the nitric oxide bug from Chris, and as throughout the last 15 years, I mean, I've seen how much good it can do to people with all kind of different diseases.
Oh, I know.
And it's just remarkable to be able to help. And we had a few years ago, pre-COVID, a case study with a girl that had warts all over her feet, and we managed to get some approval to treat her, and got and treated her with our liquid. And the mom called us after 2 days. She says, "This is unbelievable. She was in so much pain, and the pain is gone." And this is like, what else do you need, really? And like 2 weeks later, there was nothing there. And so this is what keeps you going, right? This is what drives you. And yes, there is life beside it. I've raised 2 kids that are in university now, so it's much easier at this. But I knew them when they were.
But you're only like what, 29, 25?
That's right. I met her when she was in elementary school.
Yeah.
You know, my kids know I'm 29 forever. Yeah. So they were young when we met, and yes, it was totally always some type of balance and putting them to bed and working. And luckily, in the last 3 years since kind of COVID started, they were already adults enough that they didn't need me. So really, I think the last 3 years where Chris and I really worked around the clock with all over the world, with every country possible. We can, I said, one of my best skills today is to tell you what's the time at different countries around the world right now. And it's the thought that you can save people's life. That's it. And everything that you do needed to be done yesterday. There is no time. There is no waiting. You're in the time that we really believe we can we can save people's life. So
I know it's
personal
funny
life
because
can't put aside.
yeah, I do research and I'm always complaining. You're taking time away from my research. I could be doing something very important right now. Now, but you're running a business too. You're entrepreneurs. You're stabilizing a business. You're making it really grow and expand, and I applaud you for that. And now you know about nitric oxide. You know it's perfectly safe, and that's part of the thing that motivates you, right? Is the safety of it and the natural evolution.
Yeah, I think yes, but it in 2004 when I published a paper in nitric oxide, by the way, um, there was a editorial article that basically said this will never happen. And all I was doing was showing in the petri dish that a strategy for delivering nitric oxide that would be antibacterial. So it was an uphill battle in the early days for sure, and to take it from basically laboratory to bedside. And so there was, it took 10 years. Like as Gilly and I often say, when people say, "Oh wow, you guys are really successful," and we're looking at each other, and yeah, it's a 30-year success overnight.
Yeah, but your goal is to get this as a non-prescription available globally.
And you were talking about safety. Dr. Keith Moore, who's our chief medical officer, I love he came one day and he said to us, he says, "This product has a stellar safety profile."
Mm-hmm.
And he captured it right there, right? It's the safety. If you look at any new development, new products, if anything that was developed for COVID or for other diseases, there are always some cases of issues, problems, safety. This really has a stellar safety profile, and that helps with exactly why we want this to be the first OTC antiviral, because it has such a strong safety that everyone should be able to have access to it.
Yes, and it should be something that is reasonable throughout the world. It's nothing that requires a designer drug from a major, company. And I love it because, again, everyone who's an AOSH person will tell you about nitric oxide because we understand about the production of it by human cells, whether it's endothelial cells or if it's paranasal cells. We understand how nitric oxide is important in respiration. You cannot go to an AOSH meeting without multiple people talking about nitric oxide. When you mentioned 2004, that's about when I got more involved because there were some articles about nitric oxide in saliva and how you can actually utilize the level of it as a biomarker for dental decay in children. This will make you laugh, but that's one of the things I always, when I go to dental schools to lecture, and I'm a guest speaker and I come in, I ask the students, what causes cavities? And they look really embarrassed. And why is he asking that question? Because it's really the lack of nitrate reducing bacteria. You can look at nitrate reducing bacteria in the oral cavity. And if you're missing them, you have a much higher rate of cavities because you don't have the endogenous production of nitric oxide from the nitrates being broken down, then swallowed and turned to nitric oxide in the stomach and reabsorbed back into the serum and concentrated by a factor of 10 into the saliva. So yeah, dentists kind of know about that, but they're afraid to say anything.
So if you can deliver it topically in a very accessible, safe, simple way, then what's better than that, right? Sorry, Chris. Yeah.
It's our joke about nitric oxide toothpaste.
Well, it's funny you say that because we sort of broke the barn door open. Like, if you think that nitric oxide was only approved as a drug in 1998, and there's been no other approvals for nitric until we got approval in India for our nitric oxide nasal product as an antiviral treatment, but that's allowed us to now at post-COVID is to go and really explore the use of this novel nitric oxide releasing solution. And to me, that's we were tied up in pressurized cylinders, but the thing in sanitized with Gilly is, we have this releasing solution that can be used in so many things. And as you said, dentists, we are working with a dentist right now. You'll be happy to know. And we're looking at Candida in the mouth and in bone marrow transplant patients as our first step into a phase 2B trial. And so we'll be right there soon.
Well, have you heard about the super assemblage with Candida albicans and Streptococcus mutans, how they form a co-assembly, co-kingdom assembly, and they are involved not only with dental caries and many other issues, but also very oncogenic.
That's part of the beauty of nitric, right? When we start discussions with anyone that doesn't know more, investors, and the first thing we say is nitric oxide is a natural molecule. It's a vasodilator. It can increase blood flow. It can reduce inflammation. It can help with wound healing, and it kills bacteria. It kills viruses. It kills fungi. Tell me what other molecule in this world can do that?
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating because, again, we always go back to evolutionary medicine and saying this is involved in animals as a natural evolutionary defense mechanism. And when you enhance what is there as evolutionary benefit, you're not upsetting the apple cart.
Right.
You're not bringing in a stranger that's going to end up having something else evolve, some other further evolution, which we always have to be careful of with any other type of medications, because sometimes you create more monsters. It's like the overuse of antibiotics. This will cut back on that, I would hope. The overuse of antibiotics and the increase in colorectal cancer risk. The unbelievable effect antibiotics have on how fast cancer progresses in an individual, which is the stuff out of the UK. I don't know if you realize the work the UK has done on this, but whenever we have something besides antibiotics that we can use as antimicrobial, you are going to save a lot of lives. So kudos to you.
Yeah, look at disease like sinusitis, right? It's the disease that's the 5th most common use of antibiotic is for sinusitis, and in most cases it doesn't work.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. That's been shown many times. There are some great articles out of Mayo Clinic too about sinusitis and overuse of antibiotics. How many times antibiotics were totally inappropriate, and then you have the side effects later on, predisposing towards celiac disease in children. It's sad. Again, thank God we have the epidemiological data coming out of Europe, which is just fantastic on following children longitudinally. We can find a lot of these chronic diseases we're creating with overuse of medications and antibiotics. But let's get back to you guys and tell me a little bit about your social media. How are you reaching out to people?
We're being very careful with our social media. We really want to come across and make sure that people understand that everything we do is based on very, very strong science and based on evidence. Social media is challenging, right? You get people that says really mean things because they don't know who you are and they don't know how much effort you put in different things. And you just have to trust that you put what you know is right. You put the science behind it. We're using LinkedIn to update people on where we are and what we're doing. We're using Twitter. We have our website updated with all the news. But it's social media is a tricky thing, right?
Absolutely. And you're absolutely correct. Sometimes if you do things, you're not taken seriously if you overdo the social media. Yeah.
Right.
I didn't see any TikTok from you guys, so
we stayed out of that for now.
No TikTok.
No, I'm not a TikToker. I mean, I did one once. Someone challenged me, so I did it. So nitric oxide, you're on this path. What do you foresee will happen? Like, what's her business path? What's her future? What do you want to progress to as time goes on?
We want to change the world, right? We see the world as I think you see it, as full of treatments using nitric oxide that will benefit the world.
That's next week, but how about tomorrow?
We're hoping as soon as possible to get approval for the nasal spray to be used in the US, and really be our goal is to be the first over-the-counter antiviral product. But we are also working in parallel on a whole range of other indications. We have a full team that's working now in prioritizing. We're a small company, and we need to prioritize what's more important, what we can do first, what makes sense, where we think we can make the most impact. So there's a whole range of indications on our platform technology that we're working through now to decide. We are in clinical trials in sinusitis, diabetic foot ulcer, which I think both Chris and I are very excited about the potential and the change of people's lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Chris, you wanna add to that?
No, I just get excited hearing about you. I'm just excited to be moving these forward. COVID was a blessing for us, of course, because we were working in sinusitis and we were working in onychomycosis, and then everything stopped because of COVID. And when I say a blessing, what I mean is that it forced us every challenge. And I guess we're entrepreneurs. Every challenge is an opportunity. And so we looked at ourselves, and we knew that it was antiviral, and we felt very obligated. And we were one of the first, at least in Canada, out of the gate to start a clinical trial and to bring the nasal spray as an antiviral. But now after COVID, we have a lot of safety data. We learned a lot clinically, and we can now, as Keith says, it's a stellar safety, which we knew before, but now it's proved, if you know what I mean. All right. And so that allows us to open the doors. And as Gilly said, we're, sinusitis, warts, some topical uses in dermatology, infectious disease. And we have a lot of other things where we can go. And I think that's kind of the exciting part, because we've been in Nitric for so long. We can have the foresight to see where the clinical applications that we can best help people with infectious diseases, etc.
I was even wondering about ophthalmic. And when you said foresight, that came to my mind even stronger, that, with eye infections and everything else. I mean, it's just, I could see so many potential uses for it.
And I think part of anything questions that's coming up, and the part of the reason that we know the safety is not just the clinical trial that we're doing, and of course we brought it to the population knowing this is a safe product. But in the meantime, we've sold over 1 million bottles around the world, right? We've sold enough bottles in countries that it is already approved. It's approved for sale, and it's in the market in Israel, in Europe, in Asia, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Thailand, in Indonesia, and it is approved as a treatment for COVID in India as well. Yep. So depending on the claim and the indication.
So I was just going to say to that, and so with the pharmacovigilance program we have, our global pharmacovigilance, we're able to, it's remarkable. It's almost not unbelievable, but as we've learned is that the feedback and the, any side effects are very nominal. But again, not so surprising considering that nitric oxide is produced in our bodies. So as surprising as it is, I always remind people, it's not that surprising. When you think about all the major breakthrough drugs that we really think about in history, a lot of them are molecules that are in the body already. If you think about a number of them, like dopamine and
right,
nitroglycerin.
This is all, we're going to get into the clinical trials because I want you to describe them. I know I looked at one of the clinical trials earlier, and I got really excited seeing clinical trials because that's what they want to see, right? Everyone always wants to see the clinical trials. And so talk to us a little bit more about NORS. And NORS is your nasal oxide rinse solution. How does that differ from NONS?
Well, if you think about it, NORS is the liquid, nitric oxide releasing solution, or the liquid.
Mhm.
And then depending on the dose and depending on the delivery method is how we define what it is. So NONS is NORS, but it is delivered through the nose. So it's nitric oxide nasal spray.
Right. So
And then we have
what are the
NOS.
indications for one as opposed to the other? I mean, NORS is just a generic name for all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
NONS is a trade name for the nasal spray, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, and we have, like, for example, with sinusitis, and you can see probably in our clinicaltrial.gov. So NOSI is a nitric oxide sinus irrigation. So
Okay.
for every different indication,
At least that's internal, right? I'm sure we'll have some nice trade name, but like we have Inovid and Virex, but like for our gargle, for our throat, it's NORG, as simple as nitric oxide releasing gargle. So,
I suppose for people who cannot make up their mind, you call it non-committal.
I love it. That's good. That was quick.
we'll come to you next time we need a name.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about the clinical trials then? People can go online, by the way. You can go to the U.S. National Library of Medicine, look at clinicaltrials.gov if you want to read a little bit more about it. But let's talk about clinical trials, and let's talk about institutional use after that, because that fascinates me too.
Right. Well, I guess I can address this. First off, I just want to reiterate what Gilly said is we are very serious scientists, and we want to publish good science, and we want to have solid data, and that's what we stand by. And so our two major clinical trials are one in the UK, and we were able to during the I think the alpha variant at the time, we were able to have a randomized controlled trial, and we were able to show, working with I'm going to choke here. The group that we worked with. Ooh, it's not good.
Ashford.
Well, we better get it right. How about you look up the article?
Okay.
Anyways, but the point was that is some people always ask us to say, gee, how come you guys went after treatment first and not prevention? Because it's obvious how this works is, we can talk about it a little later, but post-exposure prevention. And we looked at ourselves and say, hey, if we could show that we could reduce the COVID viral load in the nasal cavity from high levels to no or little or no, then that would be proof that if you reduce it in the nose, then it would prevent not only transmission, but symptoms, right? It was quite logical for us. So our first venture into the randomized controlled trial, phase 2, was in the UK with the group, and we clearly showed that we could reduce the viral load 99.9 in 72 hours. So that was exciting. And so
compared to saline,
that was compared to saline. So we, in a randomized controlled trial, again, we put a high bar on ourselves to make sure that it's an RCT and not sort of a anecdotal, although we have a ton of anecdotal exciting things, but we don't publish those. But and then we were able, and then the second trial, which we really like, is the opportunity that we had to look at individuals that had turns out Delta and Omicron at the time, a much larger trial, much higher powered. But we were able to, the significant part about that is we were able to repeat, of course, the reduction in viral load like we did in the UK. And in this case, we weren't just against saline, we were against a preservative. So we still had a significant difference between the two groups of reducing the viral load. But to me, what I think the important part of that study is that we were able to reduce the time to a negative PCR in half. So instead of 3 days, or instead of 7 days, it was 3 days, which is for either Omicron or Delta or Omicron variant. And to me, I always say to people like, oh, if we had this at the beginning of COVID, and I could tell you that you could reduce your quarantine time, because remember, you didn't get out of quarantine until you got a PCR negative test, right? But if I could tell you, hey, take this nasal spray during the day, as soon as you get sick, and by day 4, we could cut your quarantine in half. I think we would have been superheroes. Now we're just, now we're just scientists, and we're just pushing forward doing what we do. But my only regret is that we couldn't, 2020 hindsight, and it wouldn't be possible. But if we had that data then, but also prepositions us for, hey, it's agnostic, as you said. This is an agnostic treatment, so it doesn't matter which virus, right? And so that's why we're moving into, with the FDA and other regulatory agencies, we're looking at not just COVID, but we're looking at the flu. So that'll be very important as we move forward. And so we like to tell people we're not a COVID, just in COVID study or company. We're serious about this, and we're moving and taking this, of course, into other uses beyond COVID and pre-positioning for a pandemic, because it's very stable. You could stockpile this. That's everything we've been able to do, is do stability testing, accelerated stability. We're working on 3 years now for shelf life, and still all within specification. And so that excites me, because now the next, heaven forbid we have another pandemic, but you could stockpile this, and we would be ready this time. And again, I just want to state here for everybody, we're not here to replace the vaccines, but it takes time to develop vaccines. And as we know, there's space and time in between. So why not have something else in our tool belt that helps and protects us until a vaccine is developed in a proper way. So,
and I think it's just important to differentiate it here, because we have, as Chris said, we have this treatment that we did treatment for COVID clinical trials. We're doing now, waiting to start a phase 3 for prevention in the US. So the reason really, as Chris explained, that we got into treatment is just because we wanted to show reduction in viral load. And then we thought, oh my gosh, it's not just reducing viral load. It can really help with the disease and with shortening the disease. But then doing the reduction of viral load and going towards the idea is that everyone will have it in their pocket, just like they have a hand sanitizer. Mm-hmm. And people often ask, okay, I put it in my nose, how long does it last? Or you think about it like a hand sanitizer. It is the hand sanitizer for your nose. That's what. So, or as some publications came recently.
Don't say it.
The pill the day after. It is a post-exposure prevention. So mm-hmm. if think about it, that if people were sick and we managed to reduce their viral load significantly from very, very high viral load. So if I was yesterday in the grocery store and I went out and I came home and I sprayed and I got infected there, I will reduce the viral load to a point that I will not get the disease, that my body can handle it.
And the other thing that's nice about it, because it's a post-exposure, you don't have to take it all the time. Meaning if you're at home, you don't necessarily need to take it. But when you go out and venture into public, or you go on planes or the subway, when you get off or come out of daycare, you spray yourself, and so it's a little bit of a nuanced twist, because sometimes people say, well, how long does it last for? Well, it's not about lasting for, it's about reducing and getting on top of the reduction in viral load after you've been exposed.
Although I've been out of daycare for a while.
Yes.
But I love the fact that we're looking forward. I mean, this is the main thing, is we're not done with pandemics. Not with the world population growth, and not with the world health not being good. We're predisposing ourselves to future pandemics. And I love the fact that maybe this will be useful for RSV, H1N1. I mean, it could be useful for a lot of things. And I applaud you so very much. And I know this is not a drug. This is actually a medical device, correct?
In some countries.
In some countries, okay.
It's a medical device.
Okay.
According to the FDA in the US, this is an RX. Mm-hmm. And
okay.
Depending on how it's defined by regulators in different countries.
Right.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because it was approved initially for blue babies, it became an RX. used
Okay.
in the institution. And so that's the only approval for nitric prior to us was that. And so our argument over time will be, and obviously in some countries they see it as the dose is so much lower than what we give to the babies
And it's
that,
topical.
and it's topical, it's local. We have little, if any, absorption, which we've shown, and so you
And
know,
also,
but the challenge is in the countries where it's approved already as a prescription, we're stuck with the label as a prescription, but
Yeah.
we have all of the data that we hope that we will be able to rapidly transition over to OTC.
Any
and really,
possibility it could be added to like ventilators and stuff like that?
Oh, you know, that could be a whole other topic. In fact, I was just talking today to the patent lawyer, and we have a bunch of stuff that we're working on. So
Well,
I'm
because
excited to go
yeah, it would
back
make
to the.
sense to me. Yeah, I mean, this is back to your roots, Ashley. Going back to roots and institutions, I would just absolutely love to see this available. I have my youngest daughter is a pediatric ICU nurse. I would love to see our nurses have it. I would love to see dental offices have it. I would love to see hygienists have it. Pediatricians, everyone who deals with chronically sick people.
yeah.
I have a great story. My daughter is in third year residency at Loma Linda University Medical Center as an OBGYN surgeon, and she gets jokingly upset at me. She says, "Dad, I'm the only person in my entire cohort that hasn't had COVID 1 or 2 times, and because I'm using your nasal spray, and I'm ready to give up because I want to have 10 days off like everybody else." So anyway, but you're right. I mean, it could protect healthcare workers, and you know, and that's where our passion is, to help people and get people back to work, and healthcare workers to help those that need their expertise.
You know, when you look at the
again,
research,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
also part of the questions that's coming in, and it was, we had Norse as an antiviral, and we had evidence to that prior to the pandemic with RSV and rhinovirus and influenza and all of this. So these studies were all done prior to the pandemic. When pandemic started, we started showing that it works on any virus, right? And that's part of the difference between some antivirals that are in the market today. First of all, they're much more specific, where this is a general antiviral. The safety profile, like, it is such a safe product to use, really stellar safety pro. And some of approvals in the US came early on, where you could show reduction in hospitalization. So at that point, the companies that could do those studies at that point could get it to the market as a treatment for COVID, because they could show reduction in hospitalization. Because we're a smaller company and it took us a longer time to get there, when we did the study, we did it when it was Delta and Omicron, and there wasn't hospitalization. There just wasn't enough. The study needs to be so large to be able to show it that it's impossible.
Which is an interesting side note here is that every antiviral, monoclonal anybody that got that approval, all have shown a reduction in viral load, but no drug has been approved or showed efficacy if they could not reduce viral load. So there's that link that we were trying to get the link, but because now we don't have the hospitalization endpoint, it's a much higher, tougher bar to do.
And if you look at history, like anti-HIV drugs, a lot of them were approved based on reduction on viral load.
Right.
But today, regulators, when we approach them, they want to see more than reduction in viral load. They want to see reduction in hospitalization, which is very difficult to show these days.
And you have the safety factor, which is something that's tremendous. I don't know how many people realize this, but in studies, they've shown that Tibetans, high altitude people, have a higher level naturally of nitric oxide, which helps with them dealing with the altitude. So you can almost say, I want to use your nasal spray or a inhaler before I go to Denver, go skiing, I'll have less problems with the altitude.
Well, I think
That's
both Chris and I have it with us all the time, and we don't go anywhere without it. So,
Well, I don't have any to bring up here. No one sent me a prop.
well, we're not allowed to yet in the U.S. So we're really hoping to get this trial done as soon as possible, and then get an expedited approval. That's all we can fight for and hope for. Trying to get support from governments to try and get this done as quickly as possible.
I'd love to see that because, again, a little fact that people with mitochondrial dysfunction have lower levels of nitric oxide too. So you can actually go through everything with nitric oxide, diabetes, obesity. So many things are linked to nitric oxide levels. And
what's you brought to my attention is that we're on our, I haven't told Gilly this yet. We had our last enrolled patient. We have one more to go for our diabetic foot ulcer study. And so that's wound healing, which we haven't really, we've been, my background's respiratory sort of as yours, but there are other areas like wound healing. We've shown that the different concentrations either act as a collagenase upregulator or at a lower dose enhance fibroblasts development, and so wound healing. And
I've read about that.
And so we're
burn patients, because that was always a major thing at the hospital. These poor kids come in with burns.
Yeah.
I think
so many GAs. We have to do so many general anesthetics. I would be, when I was doing my anesthesia training, I have images in my head I'll never lose.
Yes,
from these kids, and anything we can do to help them. We're getting toward the end here. Tell me about the future. I mean, we talked about some, but any more glimpses into the future? Do you have your crystal ball ready here for me?
Well, I was going to just say there's, when you're talking about burns, I think my dream is the liquid could be used for so many things. It harnesses nitric oxide in a very, as we say, it gets nitric at the right time to the right place at the right dose. And just as you're talking about burn individuals, I would love to see NORS used as to replace saline. It would be a totally logical for saline lavage, these kinds of things to reduce the viral load, and you wouldn't have to use sterile saline. You could use this and help burn victims. There's so many, but I just want to see it. I want to see it used and help and get to people. That's my dream.
I think that seeing Chris after so many years in this, when we got the approval in India, and it was a full regulatory approval to actually treat an infectious disease with nitric oxide, and that was a very emotional moment.
I bet you it was.
And I'm hoping for many more moments like this in the future, where when we help more people, we help people that suffer constantly from sinusitis. We help people that get amputations because of diabetic foot ulcers. Drug
resistance in wounds, so many drug resistant things. And sorry, Gail, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just getting all excited.
No, I can tell. How did you celebrate when that happened?
We brought the whole company. We had just a party with the whole company. We thanked everyone because every single person in the company is part of this. And we're small, but everyone works really hard. They surprised us with a cake with the logo of the company on it. And
tell me the filling wasn't nitric oxide.
We just kept saying no.
But
I embarrassed everybody because I got quite emotional. I cried because it was such a.
That's great, man. I tell you, I can see why. Well, this is the time that we will have to wrap everything up here. And I want to thank both of you so very, very much. And I want to thank everyone listening. The whole idea here behind Fireside is to someone hope for health. This is amazing. Thank you for your contribution to World Health. We're here to be your cheerleaders. And we want to thank you again for everything you're doing, and keep inspiring people. I hope you have a bunch of young interns and got some PhD students working with you. Where do you guys work out? I know it's Canada, but
Vancouver, British Columbia. So we tap into some wonderful people from UBC and Simon Fraser University, but we have some interns and yeah, we try to instill. I think Gilly is in her own right, just as a CEO and a woman, has made inroads of what a great person can do in leadership and setting an example for young people, especially young people in to have the opportunity to do great things, and especially for young women, that there's hope. That it's not just all male white guy dominated. Sorry, I say that, but the stereotypic corporate America, whereas she's broken into that significantly and made a very large impact, I think.
Well, thank you, Gilly. You have made a huge impact, and I want to thank both of you so much. And I'll just have a few little comments here to make at the closing here. Again, this is the time that we spend, and we want to thank everyone. We want to inspire all of our colleagues, our team members, and our patients, and all those who are influencers. And you guys are definitely influencers. Time is now, not the future. You're working on the future for the world was next week, wasn't it? But tomorrow we're going to solve everything. That's the way we have to feel. We want dramatic change in how we treat illness. We want to prevent illness. And I personally want to reach into research and find all the things that we could do, like you guys have been doing, to prevent illness by going after the causes of chronic illness, but as you have with your antimicrobials. So just a little housekeeping. February 1st, our guest will be Dr. Irina Trostman from Ann and Robert Laurie Children's Hospital. Dr. Trostman is the director of Sleep Medicine Center at my hospital, and I'm so pleased to have her as a guest. Her presentation, I named it as You Snooze, You Lose, when it comes to diagnosis with pediatric sleep. That's a major thing, by the way, guys, is pediatric sleep issues. And sleep disturbed breathing is a major problem in our population, adult and children. March 8th, Fireside Chat will be none other than Dr. Alan Reisinger. He will discuss the whole body approach to healthcare. He's especially concierge medicine and NDVIP in particular, aggressive cardiovascular protection and prevention. And then we have good old Dr. Tom Neighbors, my old friend from Oral Diagnostics and Direct Diagnostics. Cardio Diagnostics with Dr. Robert Philibert. And that's something that's very interesting on March 22nd. He'll show you how you can diagnose cardiovascular disease very early on. Of course, nitric oxide and cardiovascular disease. There we go, meshing together. So thank you all. This has been a wonderful evening. I really enjoyed talking with both of you. Hopefully we can have you guys come to one of our AOSH meetings one of these times, and we'll have you have the main stage. You can tell a whole bunch of people.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, that'd be great.
Thank you for all the good work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, and good night, everybody. And this is Mark Cannon signing off on Fireside Chats.